I think Brent Venables can win in the Big 12, new head coach at Oklahoma, obviously, but she continues, or maybe he continues. We'll see. Can he win in the SEC? Can Brent Venables win in the SEC when they make the move? Okay, what do we know about Brent Venables? Well, we know there are always some unknowns if you haven't been a head coach before. Well documented on this show. I don't know how you're going to handle community relations because you've never done it as a head coach. I don't know how you're going to handle your staff. You've never done it as a head coach. So a lot of the stuff that I can't possibly know, that's an obvious remains to be seen. I will say this about Brent Venables. Every box that Oklahoma could require to be checked, he checked. Everything they can know about him, he passed that test in spades. So he's the head coach there right now. Now, what else do we know about him? He had a lot of offers before. See, you know my philosophy, if you've watched the show for a while, I always told you if Pate State University is a Tier 1 program, it's always been my personal philosophy, I don't believe in hiring guys who have not been a head coach. Because if I'm at the top of the food chain, I don't have to do that. I can afford to be so selective that I only choose from guys who have proven they can do it. But if I made an exception, it would be a guy like Venables. He's not 33 years old. He's not a hotshot coordinator. He's in his 50s. He's 51 years old. So he's still young enough to have a 15-year run in him if he's the right guy and it pans out. But he also has so much experience. He's been in 8 national title games. He's won 3 of them. He's turned down many offers, so he could have left Clemson a long time ago. Why is that important to me? Well, it's important because if I'm running things at Oklahoma, obviously I'm not the only one who saw head coaching potential in him. A lot of other programs have, but also he was so selective, he didn't take any of them. He took mine. What does that tell me about Oklahoma? What does that tell me about my job? It tells me it was desirable. He's not a mercenary. He's not coming through here on a stepping stone up to the next level until eventually gets where he wants to go. This is where he wants to go. So I think, in fact, I know if I'm Oklahoma, Brent Venables certainly gets Oklahoma. He's been here before. He gets Oklahoma. I cut him open, Oklahoma comes out. Same thing we say about Sam Pittman. But also, he knows how to sell Oklahoma. It really doesn't matter if you get it, if you can't make anyone else get it. He can make other folks get it. I don't doubt their recruiting prowess under Brent Venables. And also, he gets that he has to recruit and operate at a different level. There have already been several times before he's ever coached a game there that he's been asked about this kind of stuff, like Courtney just mentioned. Is Brent Venables ready for the SEC? He has brought it up several times. I mean, he went on a rant for like 6 minutes a couple of months ago, talking to the fans. I think it was before the spring game, and boy, did they respond. And he was talking about what it's going to take, not just this year, but eventually when we get to the SEC. You know, he's kind of speaking from quasi-experience, because Clemson was always kind of viewed as an SEC program that just happened to be in another conference. And he was telling them, everything that you think's good enough has to be better. We have got to be better in every phase. We got to be better. He carries around that big binder. What he calls it escapes me at the moment. But it's just upping your level of performance. It's maximizing your output in every facet of your program. And that doesn't stop once you leave the 4 walls of the athletic complex. It extends into the fan base as well. That stuff's real. That's not just rah-rah stuff. That stuff's real. That matters. You will see results in the positive on the recruiting front from what they did at the spring game. A lot of folks mocked it. I don't really care if I'm an Oklahoma fan. That stuff matters. It matters a lot. You'll see. It'll pay dividends. But also with Brent Venables, that's a guy who gets where they're headed. In terms of roster construction, talent acquisition, development, he's competed against them. He was 16-7 against the SEC at Clemson. A lot of that South Carolina in lean years, I get that. They also went up against Nick Saban multiple times. So they faced the best of the best of the best. They played Ohio State too. They've played the best of the best. He gets it. I have no doubt about that. The only thing that leads me to remain, not a slam dunk yes on this is just the unknown stuff. And it wouldn't be any different to me if he was the head coach at Arizona. And you ask me, can he win in the Pac-12? It's unknown until you prove it. I don't know how to predict how a first-time head coach is going to handle being a head coach. I just don't. I don't know Brent Venables personally. But even if you did know him personally, think about how many times guys who have been fast-tracked to being a head coach and they were just perceived to be slam dunks. Will Muschamp at one point in his career. Everyone thought Will Muschamp was a slam dunk. And you ask folks around him, and everyone would have said, yeah, You earmark him. He's special. He's going to end up doing this for a long time. Well, where is he at right now? He wasn't a total and complete disaster, but he was never a superstar, transcendently great head coach. There's just stuff you don't know. And like I've told you before, I believe it's harder to be a new head coach in today's game than it ever has been, because there's just more on your plate now. There are things that exist in this sport that you have to be a master of, or at least delegate mastery of, that didn't even exist 10 years ago. So, yeah, I believe in Brent Venables, but it's not hating at all to say there's still a lot of unknown there. So I think, to answer the question, I think he'll be able to lead Oklahoma into the SEC. The other thing before we move on is, what's the expectation level? Because if you're trying to come into the SEC and you're saying, all right, we got to be in the national championship every 3 years, right? That's not realistic. It's possible. That's not realistic. What I expect Oklahoma to be when they come into the SEC is a perennial tough out, a contender, a team that has the roster, has the staff, has the stability, has the year-over-year investment resources to be a player every year. If you put yourself in that position, the same thing Georgia's done. Eventually, you just swing every year and you hit the piñata. Maybe you hit it 4 or 5 times and you end up being a Hall of Famer and a legend and they build a statue of you. But that's what I expect Oklahoma to be. And based on my expectation, yes, I think Brent Venables can make Oklahoma that in the SEC. And maybe the Big 12 too.